let's get going. Good morning, Stream Academy. I'm so glad that you're all here with us today. It is Wednesday, September 16th already, and it is another edition of Morning Coffee. We have a great morning coffee planned to share with you all today. We have some great presentations, some great information to share. We'll have a little discussion around some pertinent topics that are floating around out there, and see what's happening out there in the stream world. So we start all of our meetings by sharing our mission statement. Anchorage Stream Academy empowers students to be involved learners, critical thinkers, and engaged citizens who are inspired by the natural world. I love those things. I love our mission. Engaged learners. We're going to talk about engaged learners today. Ms. Gatin is going to talk about project-based learning. What is PBL? Why do we do that? Why is that our driving educational philosophy at Stream Academy? We have two teachers with us today who really push our students to be critical thinkers and have really embraced project-based learning. They are two of our teachers that do a lot of project-based learning and do it well and really model the way for that. And that is Mrs. Smith and Miss Goodman. You guys want to wave and say hi? I don't, depending on your camera view, you may or may not see that. Of course, I have my slides up. But they are our 8th grade team, our 8th grade cohort. And I've asked our 8th grade team to take on a big challenge this year. And the reason is because our 8th grade is always our smallest grade level. There's less students. So that meant that we couldn't break them into as many cohorts as we did with 6th and 7th. So what I ended up doing is I only broke 8th grade into 2 cohorts. They're about 20 students each. And Mrs. Smith and Miss Goodman, instead of the other grade levels, are broken into 4 cohorts. So they really have double the workload. They are the only teachers that are really doing multiple subjects. All of our other teachers are primarily doing their course content area, math or just science. Miss Goodman's doing math and science. In the other grade levels, the social studies and language arts are split up. Miss Smith is doing social studies and language arts. And so I just really wanted to say how much I appreciate those 2 teachers that I knew had the energy and the ability to take on a bigger load with how we had to split up the cohort group. So thank you. Mrs. Beyondage got me playing with Bitmoji last night because she's doing something with Bitmoji. So you have to forgive my Bitmojis. I had to toss in here. There are a lot of Bitmojis with coffee, and I was like, oh, morning coffee tomorrow. So I went a little crazy on Bitmoji last night to fulfill Mrs. Beyondage's requests. Mrs. Beyondage, how are you doing? How's it going in the office there at Stream?
It's going well. I miss students, but it's going pretty well. We're getting all the supplies ready for having students back in classrooms so that we can make sure that we have healthy, safe classrooms. And that's what I've been working on.
Awesome. I have been working from home this week. I took a little bit of personal travel. I did it very, very safely. I was really careful, and I went to see my younger sister, and she lives in Vancouver, Washington, and she works from home also. She works from home full time, and so their bubble is really small, and we kept the bubble really small and took every precaution. So when I got back, I had a COVID test at the airport, which was negative. And then I had to wait a week. And so Monday I had my second COVID test. So I'm eagerly awaiting the results to get that second negative test so that I can be back in my office. So full disclosure, I've been working at home, and Mrs. Beyondage has been holding down the fort because she's incredible. What else do we have on our agenda today? We'll hear from the 8th grade cohort. We'll talk project-based learning with Ms. Gatlin. We've really got a rich agenda for you this morning. We will talk a little bit about return to school, and I know that's a topic that folks are eager to hear about. I sent a long, I apologize for the length. I never used to send these really long parent letters. I was always really conscious of that. And I've always gone back through when I finish a parent letter. One of the last things I do before I send it is I go back through and I edit, I take out as much as I can to cut down my wordiness, to look for things I can just highlight a section, say, nope, I don't need that, and just cut it out. But I think it's sort of a product of the pandemic and school, school modes changing and things being so different and things being so fluid and changing so rapidly that there's so much information to communicate. And as a result, my parent letters are much longer than I'd like. So I'm sorry if I lost anyone or bored you, but I sent a long update yesterday. And the short of it is I don't know yet. I don't yet have a final decision on what returning to school will look like. Of course, we're waiting for Dr. Bishop's announcement, which should come today or tomorrow. Before we really kick that into high gear and decide how we respond and what we'll do as a school. So that's our agenda today. Does anyone have any positive, fun, good things to share? If parents especially jump in, if your child is doing something cool like a project or a lesson that you've really enjoyed, or maybe you've got some outdoor adventures going on that you want to share. In teacher world, we call this wait time. It's okay if we don't have anyone that wants to jump in and share something good. How about staff or APC that have joined us? Anyone have something good to share, something positive you wanted to share?
We have so many wonderful people willing to be on the ballot for our voting for APC seats. It's awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. We ended up, we tried to stagger our seats so that they don't all come open, and we shouldn't really have 6 seats open at one time, I don't think. But because of a couple different circumstances, we had 6 seats open, and we have 6 people who have stepped up to be on the ballot to fill those seats. So we'll have a lot of new board members on our APC. And that's really exciting. Yeah, some parents and community members. So thank you, Ms.
We have a parent who shared that their student is loving the photography in the 7th grade.
Awesome. Is that Mr. Holsopple? Mr. Holsopple incorporates a lot of photography into science, and when we do electives, Mr. Holsopple does an elective called digital microscope photography, and he does photography like through microscopes and like filming like enhanced microscopic images. It's really cool. It's a great blend of the S and the A and stream. The science and the arts blend well together.
It's Mr. Perkins's class, social studies. Which is doing the photography.
Well, also Mr. Perkins does awesome things in photography. I made an assumption because I know that Holsopple does that. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So that's sort of what's happening today and what we're going to talk about. But let's jump into the 8th grade cohort team. And I talked earlier about Mrs. Smith and Miss Goodman, and I will turn it over to them to talk about, and I'll make you a co-host, Miss Smith, just in case you need it. I'll turn it over to the 8th grade team to talk about what's happening.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. We are really excited to be here and sharing with all the parents this morning. We have lots to share. And Mr. McKelkey, we both have some slides for you, so if you can make us both co-hosts, that would be good. So we're going to start off, Ms. Smith is going to first talk about how students and parents can ensure a successful 8th grade year, some of our logistics and planning. And then I'm going to talk about our project, and then we're each going to talk about our different classes. There's 5 different classes going on. So turn it over to Ms. Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Goodman. So, hey, I'm Ms. Smith. It's Ms. Goodman and myself on the 8th grade team. I am focused on the language arts and social studies, in addition to the project class, which we do together. So we have some best practices for students, just a list of things that we've been reminding students about that we thought it would be helpful to let you know this is the stuff we say almost every single day to the students and remind them about. So some tips about during Zoom class. One things that we emphasize to them is to have their videos on when it's not being recorded. And one of the times that it's never recorded is when they go to breakout rooms, for example, and we talk about using nonverbal gestures to communicate understanding or confusion, or I'm following along with what you're saying. And just so you know, a lot of these things, even though we're doing this in the virtual teaching world, we are thinking of things that we do as a normal practice when students are in person with us, and we're trying to keep some consistency there. So we're trying to use language that's not just virtual learning, but that good overall language for what we do as good students participating. In Canvas, some things that we talk to the students about, which you may or may not be familiar with, it may be using some different language than you're used to. When students are absent, or if they are late, or if they don't remember something, we record the meat of the lessons and we post them in multiple places, but the primary places are in projects class. It's always in announcements, something called a week at a glance. And I, in my language arts and social studies classes, I post the recording, which is the meat of the lesson, in the assignment. So whatever they missed or whatever they don't remember, tell them go in the assignment, and you'll see a recording there, or a helpful video if a recording wasn't relevant. And they can see comments on graded work in their assignments on Canvas. So primary place, of course, is Canvas. And we have a video posted, but we've gone over with them and we emphasize, go and look at those comments and redo your work. And final grades are posted on Q Student Connect, but sometimes it takes 3 days for that sync to happen between Canvas and Q, which isn't like that unusual. When we used Google Classroom, it wasn't immediate that grades would be on Q. So that's not something new necessarily. But what they need to continue to remember is my work is on Canvas, my comments are on Canvas, my redoing of assignments, and then when everything gets finally calculated, that will be on Q, which there will be a little bit of a delay, but again, that's not something necessarily new. We emphasize to students that the school day is between 8 and 1:30, because again, we want to continue to promote some consistency between virtual world and possibly going back in person. And in the medium risk model, the school day is 5.5 hours, that 8 to 1:30. So we have, for example, some office hours in which students can ask questions and get extra help between 8 and 8:15. But we encourage them to come to that anyway, because hey, you're already in school. Why not just have the Zoom on in case you can go ahead and get started on work, for example, and if you have a question, you can ask us. We emphasize to students that attendance during Zoom class is the first step, and that they also need to participate during the Zoom and do the work before and after class. So we say, you're in school between 8 and 1:30. Right now we are in a virtual world. So although you have these 3 scheduled Zooms throughout the day between 8 and 1:30, you're not on Zoom the whole time. Pretend that you're in school the whole time and be thinking of, what do I need to do next for this class and that? And we have a very specific schedule that has the time breakdowns. This is when you should work for this class. This is when you should work for this class, that kind of thing. And we encourage them to follow that now, so that if we go back in person, they're used to that schedule. For help, again, I said that we record the meat of the lessons. There's a week at a glance for the projects class. So the projects class is all 4 content areas. It's me and Miss Goodman, and it can be a little complicated. It's our primary class. We think of it as like our showstopper class. That's we're putting in, everything into that projects class. It's all 4 content areas. one day Miss Goodman's talking about science lately. She'll also be doing math. And then the next day I'm doing the language arts component of the project. And then the next day I'm doing social studies. So it kind of goes back and forth. So to keep it under all in order, we have a week at a glance that we post under announcements. You can see some other ways to contact us as well. And like I said, I mentioned the office hours, 8 to 8:15. We try to emphasize to students to attend that if they have a question. On Wednesdays, I have a list here of the required activities on Wednesdays. You can see that 2 of those, and I try to explain it to students that like you have 3 class periods on Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays, and Fridays. Think of Wednesdays as you still have 3 class periods, but you kind of get to decide which part of the day those 3 class periods happen. So one of those classes is that you should spend about 45 minutes on iReady for reading. And some of our students in the 8th grade still need to do their diagnostic. And I've contacted those students and families and let them know. And then eventually it's possible for some students to show us that they have what they need on that iReady reading, and maybe that gets dropped and the emphasis goes on math, for example. Then a second thing is 45 minutes on iReady for math, diagnostic first. Some of our 8th grade students still need to do it. And the similar thing with iReady, it may be possible for some students eventually to drop that iReady math if they show us that they're at where they need to be. And then the third thing is 30 to 45 minutes on ALEX, and that is there's a knowledge check first, which again, some of our 8th grade students need to do, but that will be remaining for the whole year. And this is our plan for when students are not in specific language arts class this quarter. The students who don't have me, for example, they're still getting some of that skills, so they're not just lost and confused when they come to me second quarter. And the kids who don't have math, vice versa, so that they're still getting these subjects all year. So Wednesdays, we recommend that students also do these things. Of course, catch up on work. It's a great day to do that. Get outside, read, random acts of kindness. Is there anything you wanted to add to Wednesdays, Ms. Goodman? Or any questions for the chat or raising hand?
It all looks good to me, Ms. Smith. That was clear. And I was thinking, yeah, if you have a question, throw it in the chat, and maybe some of the questions will be answered as we go through what we're doing in our classes.
Yeah, so I'll give it another few seconds here. I'm currently looking at the chat. It's a great time if you have a question to put it in there, or you can raise your virtual or physical real hand because I'm looking at your faces.
I'll pop in with a question. So for iReady, in terms of the individual guidance of what a student should be focusing on and for how long, that's coming from like one from each of you, kind of respective to your content areas. You'll give that information to the student and parent.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. So right now we're doing a blanket statement of this breakdown that you currently see on your screen because we have several people who haven't finished the diagnostic. There's still some confusion, so we're just giving a blanket statement right now. But yes, by the end of this week, hopefully when we see students are finished with the diagnostic, that's the big thing. We need to see where they're at on that. We're going to communicate by the end of this week with individual families who needs to continue with iReady or not. Yes. And then we have some things in the chat. Maybe someone else can answer this. Adam mentioned an exercise link in the email, but didn't see the link. Ms. Beyond.
I'm working on putting the link in the chat really quick here.
Okay, and then reading recommended daily. Yes, Studies have shown huge gains by students who just read for pleasure. They read their own thing and they choose it, and they're just constant readers. Huge gains, nothing directed by a teacher. If you were at Stream last year in 6th grade, Ms. Koldeman does a lot with recreational reading, and we recommend it daily, but of course, there's a lot going on Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays, and Fridays. So we kind of put it on the flyer for Wednesday, but yeah, daily if possible is always good. Okay, I'll pause again for questions. Actually, I'm almost done. So, well, anyways, I thought there was, anyway, whatever. So here's some final tips from us. We are encouraging students to be in school from 8 to 1:30. And it would be helpful if you were also using similar language Monday through Friday. So even on Wednesdays, you're in school 8 to 1:30. And guess what? You get to choose which part of that 8 to 1:30 today. On Wednesdays, you put in those 3 required things. We have a suggested daily learning schedule, and it has the specific breakdowns, and I can put it in the chat so you can take a look at it if you need to reference it. And that schedule will be followed, like I said, it's followed during virtual learning. We encourage students to follow it. And then if we go to medium risk, 5.5 hours back in person, then that's going to be the same schedule that we follow. Catch up on Wednesdays, not like the ketchup sauce, but catch up on Wednesdays. In addition to those other 3 Alex and I ready things, as much as is possible, and ask questions. Okay. Well, I had another one. Okay. So here's some things, tips and tricks. Email us or text us through Remind app. I'm on Remind. I know most of the 8th grade parents are. And if you're in of a different grade level, your teachers are on the Remind app. We want to help. Be a parent observer on your students' Canvas courses. That's like the #1 thing. You are like a shadow on that course and you can see everything. I got a couple emails actually this morning that I was going through, and the parents like, I'm confused. Q doesn't have all the updated information. My kid says they already did this or that. I don't see the same information on Q. Well, yeah, because Student Connect, Parent Connect, Q used to be called Zangle. There's a little bit of a delay between the work that gets done on Canvas and Q. And one of the reasons is we allow students to do redos, and we want them to continue to learn through the redoing process. And so that doesn't always get updated immediately because we might be working with a student and then put the final grade on Q. So on Canvas is where you should be looking for the what do my student need to do. There's something that's handy dandy and nice and easy called a to-do list on Canvas. You click dashboard and it pulls up from every single class that your student is registered in a to-do list. It's on the right side of the screen and everything is there. And that's how you know what your student needs to do. And then let's see, attendance, participation. Anything else, Ms. Goodman?
Well, there was a question about where to see what assignments are missing. And once they're graded, at least for my classes, Q is going to be the easiest, most straightforward place, I think, for parents to go and look at. And it just says what assignments are missing right there. And I am actually not syncing my stuff through Canvas because I don't like how slow it is. So you should be able to go up there and see what's missing.
Well, in the consistent language, in encouraging consistent language and best practices and what we do among our entire school, you can see work and a to-do list that a student needs to do on Canvas. And then those final grades will be on Q. Just understand that if it's like you're looking at the end of the week, it's very likely that that has been updated by the teacher and double checked on. So yeah, what's actually graded is we don't grade everything. So like what does the student actually need to do that is graded, those final grades on Q, Student Parent Connect.
Are there any more questions about how to be a successful student or successful parent of a successful student? Anything else out there?
That's a lot of information, and I really appreciate how thorough you guys are, and what a great overview of how that works. Thank you, really, thank you.
And Tyler, did we answer that question? I see what it was now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I think I have to go play around in there and sort of juggling how kids at another school are doing it, and have a student that is not always bringing up what she's working on for the day. So it would be helpful to have that tool, just especially for Wednesdays. I think that's what our approach is, to look at it like catch up day first. And for that, I need to know what we need to catch up on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm putting in the chat the link to becoming a parent observer on your students' count in Canvas. And then of course the final grade, like, I guess you could think of it like the short list is in Q, what's actually graded. But there's sometimes a delay between, there might be a blank there and it's not actually a missing thing. It's just the update hasn't come. We haven't put it in manually, or it hasn't come in automatically yet, just as a warning. Okay, anything else? This is a great time. Pause for questions. Sorry, Ms. Goodman. We are comfortable with silence.
Well, maybe some of those questions will get answered after we go through classes, and then hopefully we still have some more time for questions. And Ms. Smith, thank you so much for that. I do have a quick commercial break and to share with you. So this is right here, if you can see my screen. I am a science teacher, and even whether they're taking science with me this semester or next quarter, they still have to do their science safety contracts. And even if we're doing things virtually, I'm still, I've got my goggles right here because I'm still doing a lot of demos for students, and they still need to know how to be safe. So that is actually an assignment in Canvas, and a lot of students still have to do it. They need you to do it with them because it's sort of a parent involvement kind of thing. So look for that, all right? And by the way, Ms. Beyondich made this really easy form to fill out. It's thank you so much, Ms. Beyondich. I love it. So it's a Google form. Okay, so I want to tell you about the project that we're doing. So as Ms. Smith mentioned, first period is all of the 8th graders together. And we're going to do this all year, well, all semester long. So we're not switching at quarter, and they're just working on this for the whole semester. So we're working on our first project is about fire. You may have heard of it. And we're asking this big driving question. It's really managing what we're doing here. And I'll go to present so you can see better. Our question is our school or home at risk of burning in a wildland fire, and how? And we're asking that by going through this sub question is, do we need to do something to protect these buildings from wildfire? And this is really a great time for this, as we've heard on the news, how the West is just burning up. We even have a student down in Washington right now who can't go outside. And so this is a great time to think about fire because it does happen in Alaska. It's a big part of our Alaska ecosystem is fire. And we have a risk in Anchorage because so many of our homes are in the wildland urban interface. So what we're doing with that, I'm going to tell you about all the topics that we're covering as we do this. We, of course, are covering fire science. So we're learning all about how fire behaves, about fire ecology, the physics and the chemistry of fire, doing all kinds of labs. Tomorrow, we're actually going to be burning some trees down. And then we're also going through community decision making because students are actually going to be making recommendations to stakeholder groups. What should be done about their home, or should the park do something in the park, or does the city need to do something? So there's a lot of community decision making going on. Of course, we're doing fire safety. Every lab we do, we emphasize safety. I have the kids telling me, Miss Goodman, tie up your hair, you know. And then fire wise is how can our homes be safe from wildfire? And informational writing and reading. The students are going to be reading a lot of, they have to sort through various materials to get the latest and the greatest. And they're going to be presenting it through writing and speaking. I'll talk about that in a sec. Also, careers. We're going to be talking about what sort of careers are in fire and fire management. We hope to bring in some guest speakers who can talk about it. And geography, where do they occur? And the climate. Students are going to be deciding this question, do we need to do something to protect our buildings based on the climate that their house or the whatever building they're choosing is in? Speaking and listening, they're going to be doing a big presentation at the end of this unit, which will encompass all these things. History, they have to learn about climate records and climate data. We're actually have plans to do some tree coring, and ideally the students would get to do the tree coring, but it may be me once again demoing it and then them doing the analysis of it. But the tree rings give us a lot of information about fire history as well as personal accounts. And then, sorry, I'm trying to negotiate all this stuff on my screen. Applied math, finally. They are doing transects and making graphs. They're doing fuel moisture calculations, which can be complicated at times. And finally, they're going to be doing a scale model. So a lot of stuff, as you look at this, you might think, what subject is this? And that is the ideal, that students are in a class and they don't even know what subject they're in. They're just in projects. And that's what we call our class, is projects. So about that scale model, students are going to be building a scale model of their home or of the building that they choose. They don't have to choose their home. They can actually choose Wayland Baptist, which is a really interesting place to do this because it is surrounded by such a thick, dense forest. So they built a scale model last year, and you see, if you look at the aluminum foil in the back, that represents the metal roof of Wayland Baptist, and they got the whole shape of it down and everything. And then their scale model includes putting the trees all around it. We have let's see, they have Q-tips soaked in water represent deciduous trees, and then the tall matchsticks are the spruce trees, and we have thin matchsticks for black spruce if they have any, and then we have a little bit of cotton for all the dry grass. And a fire starts from way off in the corner. Some students say it's from a homeless camp, that they had a campfire in the homeless camp in the park. So students come up with various reasons why the fire started, and then we burn it and we see if their building burns down. So that was fun for them, and the math of the scale model was really involved. So let's see, I think finally, just remember, students, if they choose, they get to choose, but they may be assessing your homes. So that means they're walking around the outside and they're measuring all of the fuels. Fuels mean wild plants, trees. And they're also going to be looking at things like, what's your roof made out of? How close are your cars to your house? And do you have any outdoor burning, things of that nature? Be great if you wanted to be involved in all of this. It makes it fun for your student if you're engaged in it. And I've even had some parents say, hey, I want to do some of this burning, and you're welcome to be part of that. We actually went outside and collected some fuels around the house and tested those for flammability. And if you can set up a very safe environment, if you can make sure you have eye protection for your students and you go through the rigmarole of tying their hair back and all that, that would be a fun thing for you to do, to be engaged with your student. So I'm going to stop talking about projects, and I'm going to come back later to tell you what's happening in my math and other science class. Any quick questions there? I see a question about, is it a science projects a year class? Yes, it is. But that said, if we go back to face-to-face, it might be difficult to combine the whole cohort because there's 41 students, and that would not be something we'd want to put them all together. So it might be that Miss Smith and I go back to being more separate at semester. We haven't talked about that one yet. So yeah. Any other questions about the project?
I love this as an example, and this really fits well with Miss Gatlin is going to talk today about project-based learning and what that is. And this is a great lead into talking about our driving educational philosophy, which is project-based learning, because this is what we're about right here. Like, the fire project is a great example of project-based learning. And one of the hallmarks of project-based learning is that we take education from this theoretical, hypothetical place, right, where it exists in this little bubble, or its own little box. And we take that to like real world hands-on application and relevance. Like, how is, one of the big questions for educators, how is this relevant? How do we make this relevant to kids so that they care and they engage in it? And doing a study of your home and your property and the brush and the trees and all of that, and actually analyzing the potential for fire to affect your property and for fire to spread and how safe your home is. Like, that is what we mean when we talk about real world relevance in education. So we're taking science and we're taking math and some pretty complex concepts, honestly, for 8th graders. And we're bringing that to this real relevant place. And so, way to nail it, 8th grade team, on project-based learning. Thank you.
And I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Smith to talk about what you're doing in your individual classes.
Yes. So I have language arts and social studies. The two classes are a support of the projects class. So what we do in social studies is relevant and just deeper. So in projects class, we are going to talk about community leadership soon. So in the social studies class right now, we just started civics and a little bit of history, US Constitution, where do our rights and responsibilities come from, for example. The language arts class is also in support of the projects class. So in the projects class, they're doing a lot of web research and science and data, informational reading. So in language arts right now, we are learning how to analyze informational text and how to respond to informational text. And we'll soon go into argument, because that is what they're going to be doing in the projects class, is making a case for their recommendation for their fire risk assessment recommendation. So we'll be doing that in language arts. Okay, any questions for the 8th grade team? Or wait, did you talk about your other class yet, Ms. Goodman?
No, I'm going to talk about that right now.
Okay, done.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen again. Mr. McCullough, you stop sharing yours. Thanks. Yeah, so as Ms. Smith said, that we are doing support for the project. So in science, they're learning chemistry and they're learning about heat transfer and things of that nature. Math is a little different because it is, well, it's math. And as you saw, we're doing a lot of math in our projects class, but especially in the upper classes, there's requirements if they want to get to high school. So I just wanted to talk about that really quickly. Some students don't have math this quarter. They will have pre-algebra or math intervention next quarter. If they're not taking math this quarter, that is really essential that they work diligently in ALEKS now. And so those are the pre-algebra students and those with, so mostly pre-algebra students. Right now, I have students in geometry and algebra. So geometry, just to know, is a fast-paced high school course. And as with all the other courses, we're packing a semester's worth of material in one quarter, but this is really true for geometry. So I want to urge you that if students miss a class, or if they're even late to class, they miss a lot. This is a class you don't want to get behind in. And so far, most of the students are up to the challenge. They're doing a great job keeping with the flow. It is challenging if there's a couple that missed a day or two, and they need your help. I want to say that this is a flipped class. So what we're doing is having students start off geometry by watching a video that I'm creating about the content, and then they're doing their practice problems, and then we're coming back as a class and going over questions, and then looking at big picture applications to what they're doing and having fun discussions. Algebra, we're actually doing a little mini project in algebra, a trail cam. So if those of you who don't know what a trail cam is, it's a motion detector camera that you can put by a tree. You tie to a tree by an animal trail, wildlife trail, and it takes pictures as they come by. And so we're doing this to get some fun data that they can play with. And I just wanted to show you an example of some of the things that I caught on a trail cam this summer. And so students are collecting, learning how to collect data, and there's all sorts of data. You could see there's time of day, and there's a temperature, and there's what kind of wildlife they caught. That's a wolf, by the way, not a bear or a dog. It's a black wolf. So that's just a little bit about what we're doing in the math classes. So yeah, stop my share and and both of us will take questions if you have them.
One good question is Alex information, how to log on to Alex. I messaged, for example, all of my students in Canvas a private message with their login information. And if your student missed that or doesn't know how to see there's an inbox in Canvas in which we can message students directly. We can definitely send it to you. Just let us know if you need it. And I'll respond to the one in the comment who needed that and send that to you.
Yeah, I sent the first week of school, actually, I sent the login information to every 8th grade student.
Awesome. Thank you again, 8th grade team. Great job. Great stuff. Great examples of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to get at Stream Academy. Much appreciated. Make sure that you sign up to be a Canvas observer so that you can see those pages and see what's happening. And if you have any more, I think there's a lot more discussion that could be had with the 8th grade team. So if you have more questions for them, make sure you shoot them an email. And get in touch with them, and they can follow up. Awesome. Well, thank you, 8th grade team. The next thing on our agenda as we start to move forward is to slide right into talking about project-based learning with Miss Gatlin. Good morning, Miss Gatlin. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing great. Thanks for posting my Bitmoji on there. It's one of my big joys in life lately is my Bitmoji.
Sylvia got me back on this Bitmoji kick, so now they're everywhere.
It's so fun. It's so fun. Yeah, so I get to tell you guys about PBL today, and this is a perfect segue because the 8th grade team just really exemplifies what true project-based learning, multidisciplinary, it's project-based teaching is what they're doing so that their students can do the learning. But so I'm really proud to follow up with what they said, and I can tie in a lot of examples of how they're incorporating the various elements of project-based learning into what they're doing. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Oh, okay, yes, here we go. All right, so as Adam has mentioned, Stream, one of our main drivers at Stream is project-based learning. And the acronym for that is PBL. Sometimes you might hear problem-based learning. And if you really get into the research of what the difference is, they're very similar. They begin with a challenge or a problem. So project-based learning is a student-centered pedagogy or a teaching method in which students gain knowledge and skills by working together to investigate and respond to real-world engaging problems or challenges. That's the more of an exact definition. So as Stream was beginning to develop our project-based model, what this would look like and what we should be thinking about as we're creating and designing projects, we looked to the Buck Institute of Education to kind of give us some guidance. And so I still go back to that a lot because they have really sort of, what do I want to say, distilled things down into very simple compartments. And I'm a big fan of compartments, or what do I want to say, just topics of the elements. So there are 8 elements and they all center around the key knowledge, understanding, and skill. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these and what that means. And as a parent, you might hear some of these words fly around through your teachers or maybe through your students. And so I just hope to help you gain a little bit more understanding of what it is we're trying to do at Stream with project-based learning. So like I said, all of those elements center around what are the kids going to know understand and be able to do by the end of this project. So there's many ways teachers can go about putting these key understandings or content skills together. So one of the things that teachers often begin with are the content standards. And this depends on which content or contents you are incorporating into your project. So beginning with the standards is essential. And then there's all different kinds of other standards. As you saw with Miss Goodman's example, she had all different kinds, I think I counted like 9 different content understandings skills that were going into their fire project. So social emotional learning skills are often incorporated into projects as well. And then the 21st century skills are a big thing that we try to hammer at Stream. And these are skills that really promote project-based learning, but then also promote success for students later in life, in high school, after high school, and even into their adulthood. And so these 21st century skills are things like communicating, collaborating, creativity, critical thinking, and problem solving. And so sometimes teachers are working on building these skills within their class before they really even dive into a project. And so they're setting up the PBL culture. So you might see, for instance, I know right now the 7th grade team, Hopsopple and Beer, they're working on really developing some of these skills before they dive into their big project. So the challenging problem or the question, also known as the driving question. So perfect example Miss Goodman gave is our school or our home at risk of burning in a wildland fire? To have sort of an overarching question for the project helps guide that project, helps drive it, hence the term driving question. So these questions can sometimes be challenging as a teacher designing a project. Like, you have this project idea, but what is our question? And so we kind of use this idea that this should be an open-ended question. It can't be something that's Googleable. So it's something that really kids need to dive into and explore. It's not something they can just Google an answer for. Another aspect is sustained inquiry. And so this one can be kind of hard to wrap your head around, but the way I really think of it is one big question leads to many more questions. And you saw that with Miss Goodman's general question, there were multiple questions underneath there. And so with sustained inquiry, sustained of course means over a period of time. So this is more of an active, in-depth process that takes place over a longer period of time, and sometimes that time period could be a couple days or it could be weeks. It's not typically something that's just done in a one-day class event. It typically requires authentic research, as students have to come up with the questions of what they need to know to be able to answer the other question. And so then they're out actually doing the research that they need to do, using authentic resources to answer those questions. And some of you may know I come from a science background. So for me, this sustained inquiry, you start with a question, and typically at the end of a process of any sort of experiment, you come up with way more questions than you started with to lead into the next thing. So it's just this cycle of questions and gaining knowledge, and then learning that you need to ask more questions. And then authenticity is a huge part of PBL. This is where the kids are making real world connections, and they're using real world processes and tools. For example, Ms. Goodman was talking about field moisture samples and fuel assessments. And these are things that fire scientists are doing out in the field. So using those authentic tools and processes, as the kids are working together, creating authentic group roles. So within the group, there are specific roles that are designed that are more real world roles. And then presenting to an audience, the final product, an authentic audience. So ideally, presenting to either a community council, or I know last year, one of the ideas was that the students would present to Wayland Baptist, because last year the fire project really kind of focused more on the Wayland Baptist campus. And so the students were going to present to the Wayland Baptist staff, and that would be an authentic audience for that project. And then, of course, with the authenticity is this really may be connected to students' interests as well, and what they want to learn, and so that they're engaged in what they're learning. And it's something that is tangible to them versus just something that's far, far away. Another aspect that we really try to incorporate is student voice and choice. And there's a range of student voice and choice. I think as students are really learning PBL, sometimes it can be a challenge for teachers to give too much voice and choice. So when teachers are designing projects, we think about what can the students have a say in, and that again helps keep them engaged in that, figuring out what it is that the students can participate or help guide that project in. And then with this can be also, how do the students display their learning? So what are their options for learning, and then for also displaying their learning in ways that work for them and their needs. And then, as I think I stated earlier, that this is really another way to increase student engagement so that they feel like they're really a part of their learning. It's not just something that's being done to them. Reflection. What happened? So what about that? Now what? So the learning really is, as the construction of the deeper learning happens, this happens with reflection. So providing students with opportunities to make sense of what they are learning throughout the project is important. And so this can be done with journaling or exit tickets, discussions, artwork. It goes on and on. There's many different ways that students can reflect, but without that time for reflection, often that level of deeper learning can be lost. So reflection is a big part that we focus on at Stream, and plan in time for that throughout the project, not just at the end. Critique and revision. This is a fun one. So this image that I have here is an image that is from a lesson that comes from PBL Works called Austin's Butterfly. And in the critique and revision process, we teach students about how to give and receive meaningful feedback so that they can improve their work. And so that just right there is a huge skill. And so sometimes teachers will just even work on the critique and revision part again before they begin a project, so that when the kids are in the project, they have already developed that skill. And so you may see many drafts. You may see if a kid says, oh, I'm done, because a lot of times kids want to do the work and then they want to be done. And so it can be a struggle for teachers to say, well, let's, and a lot of times teachers are including peer critiquing and revising, which is awesome, because again, then the students are really taking part in their learning and the learning of their group members as well. And so typically there's protocols that are implemented for structuring of critique, and we teach students how to give good feedback that is going to be helpful, kind, and specific to their group members, and then how to take that feedback and then revise what they have already done. So this one can be really challenging for the students, but again, it's a life skill, and one of those, whoops. Hold on here. Here we go. All right. And finally, the public product, the end of the project typically results in a presentation or a competition or a demonstration or a performance, some display of learning to the community. And that community could be a classroom, it could be the school, it could be their grade level. I use the word community again, and it could be our showcase. And so as some of you know who've been with Stream for a while, we typically have showcases twice a year. And those showcases are the community display of these public products that the students have created. So in this image here, this is a student of ours that we had for many years, and this is a project from a couple years ago where we were still developing our project methodology. But this was a sled building project, and the students researched how to make the fastest sled, and they worked in groups, and they created these sleds, and then we took them to the park, and they tested them to see whose could go furthest and fastest. So that was sort of the public product for that particular project. All right, here we go. Why can I not? Hold on, guys. Sorry. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to open it up for questions. And yeah, I'm happy to take any questions that you might have about project-based learning, what it is, how we do it at Stream. or anything along those lines, or anything in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Gatlin. That was a great overview of the PBL model and a really good look at, in-depth look at how and why we do PBL, the ways that we engage kids in that authentic real world learning. Ms. Gatlin joins almost every morning coffee with us, and so she's always here to talk a little bit about our mission and vision and different aspects of what we do. So there's a lot of opportunity for follow-up on PBL, project-based learning with Ms. Gatlin. Thank you, Ms. Gatlin.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the last thing, and I know this is a topic that folks are super interested in hearing from me on. The last thing to touch base on today is return to school and what that looks like. And again, I don't have an answer yet. I know that I have been planning for the possible scenarios that might come, and just kind of looking at all of our options, and I'll continue to do that. So the big piece that we're waiting for is for the district to make a formal announcement. It looks likely that the district will announce a rollout plan for returning to school face-to-face for each level, for elementary, for middle school, and for secondary, and that should come soon. And so I can, once that's final and formalized, I can take the next steps with gathering information from all of you, from parents, and talking with our staff and saying, okay, within the structure that ASD has provided, within those parameters, those broad parameters that we need to fit under, how does this look for Stream? So we have some leeway, one of which is we're a charter school, and so our APC, our governing body, and I can make some decisions on what's best for our program, that can be different from the large traditional middle schools, as long as we fit in the overall parameters ASD provides. And we're also a lot smaller. So when the district's making decisions on what will work for schools with 1,000 students and 30 kids in a classroom, we have some leeway on how that might look different at our school of 160 students with 20 students at the most in a classroom. So I know that that's a whole lot of saying nothing in a way, because I don't have anything final yet. I can tell you that my preliminary planning is that when we return face-to-face, the district is saying they'll have schools return face-to-face 5 days a week. One of the big questions I want to ask our school community, and so you get a little preview of this, I'll talk with staff about this at the staff meeting in a half hour, and this will be in the survey that's going to go out, is do we want to consider requesting permission from the district to have the leeway to go 4 days to a week face-to-face when we return, and to keep Wednesday as an e-learning day. I think that Wednesday as an e-learning day has been a really powerful tool to allow planning and preparation and professional development, and for students to focus on online curriculum. And so that's one of the things we'll consider. Just a really, there's no decision on that. It's really depending on the feedback I get from parents and also from our staff. Keep in mind, we have always had an early release day on Wednesdays. And so Wednesday's always been a different day outside of our regular schedule. And it's part of the reason why I'm considering, putting that out there. So Wednesday's been a short day, an early release day, a day for project-based learning mostly, and outdoor projects, outdoor learning, those types of things. What we'll continue with the quarter model. I foresee us continuing with the quarter model all year, because I think, for one, we need to maintain that balance, right? So if you've got math and science this quarter, we have to switch it, and you have to have language arts and social studies next quarter. We can't go this quarter back to a semester model. And the other reason to maintain the quarter schedule for the whole year is we don't know what's going to happen yet. We're still in a pandemic. And so if, hopefully not, we want to avoid this, but say if in, December or February or, April, there's some type of a massive outbreak and the district forces, decides for all schools to go back fully virtual on a short notice, what we want to be in that quarter model. So students will still just have 3 classes. It was one of the issues last at the end of last year was students had 6 or 7 classes, and we sort of cut back on like the electives and the PE and pulled those off, but you still had 5 or 6 classes, which is overwhelming to do at home. So I anticipate us staying with 3 classes and staying in the quarter model all year, and then hopefully in 21, 22 going back to a semester model and more classes. We will definitely continue to minimize passing times, minimize large gatherings, not have a lot of student interaction when we come back face to face. So I'm asking teachers to have cohorts stay primarily in one room and not switch classrooms. So it'll be a little bit of a shift for our teachers. Instead of kids switching classrooms, teachers may shift classrooms. Miss Smith might walk across the hall second period or third period and switch places with Miss Goodman, rather than having the students have a passing time and be in that tight hallway mingled all closely together. So we're looking at things like that to mitigate spread. And of course, we will maximize outdoor learning time, outdoor adventures, outdoor learning activities. And again, Miss Smith, Miss Goodman are masters of that. Miss Goodman always wants students out in the park and out doing research in the field. And so I anticipate a schedule and parameters for the staff to where we guarantee kids are outside 25% of the time. And just the research and the science, we heard Dr. Zink say it to us last spring when she was on Morning Coffee, that one of the best ways to mitigate the spread of a virus is being outdoors. Fresh air and open space and airflow are all things that, mitigate the spread of a virus, as opposed to being in a tight indoor space together. We'll continue to provide blended learning. We're not dropping any of our platforms. So we'll continue to use Canvas, as a regular part of our instruction. And we'll continue to provide access to lessons and to the curriculum online. So we'll hold on to that for several purposes. One of which is those are great tools. We already had a blended learning model at Stream. And also, again, if we had to go back to a fully virtual mode, we want to be totally ready. We want that transition to be as seamless for staff and for students and parents as possible. We want it to not be another major change in how we're doing business, because that's hard for people, really hard for people. And again, one of the big pieces is, at the beginning of the year, there was so much consternation about if we come back face to face, do I have to? And so we're talking as a staff, and what we'll continue to work on is, if families are really not comfortable coming back face to face, we're going to work with you to continue to keep you in your classes and keep you going virtually until you're ready. So we're not going to try to force students who aren't ready to come back. We'll work with you on that. So that's sort of an overview of what we're looking at. And then just to share with you a little bit of my thinking to sort of wrap up. Again, as soon as I have some decisions and some more clear direction, I'll run that by our APC and our staff, and I'll get that out to parents. But just to share with you some of my thinking, I'm not a fan at all of the idea of going back face-to-face in the middle of a quarter. And at the risk of saying maybe a little bit too much, that's potentially part of the plan that ASD will roll out, is that some levels of school may go back mid-second quarter. And so, I'll just put myself on a limb a little bit, I guess, and say, I don't, as the leader of Stream Academy, I don't believe that that's best practice. I think for teachers and for students, we need to do everything possible to stay in the same learning mode during a quarter. So I will tell you that my thinking is, if I can avoid it, if I can formulate a comprehensive plan that's approved by the district and our APC, I will try to keep us from going back mid-quarter. It just makes no sense to me. One of the jobs of the principal is to minimize disruption to the learning of students and minimize disruptions to teachers teaching, right? As like, the whole point of education is kids learning and teachers teaching, and I'm just here to be a steward of that. And so the idea of going back in, late October or early November in the middle of a quarter to have teachers teach in one mode that they've worked so hard to perfect. Our teachers have worked so hard to be good at and to effectively deliver instruction in this virtual platform. And they've bent over backwards to do this, and they've done an amazing job. To ask them for half of a quarter to teach fully virtually, and then to switch, and now we've got kids back to face-to-face, which is a completely different learning mode, just really doesn't seem like best practice to me. And again, the same for families, the same for students. For students to say all of your work, all of your assignments, your whole mode of learning, the whole way that you focus and learn and engage is virtual until halfway through the quarter. And then for those classes you're in, those assignments you're doing, those projects you're immersed in, we're going to switch and you're going to go do that face-to-face. So that's sort of a long explanation for what may be part of the plan that's specific to STREAM, outside of, or in addition to the district's plan, is I'll look to start us at a natural break, and the most natural break, obviously, the most logical break points are quarter breaks. There may be other points we can look at together to where we could start a face-to-face. And I think a face-to-face return needs another induction week type of set of activities. It needs another several days to really roll into what that looks like and to ease that transition. So that's a whole lot, I know, yet in short, there's nothing final yet. Wait and see what the district says, what ASD says. Know that within the parameters ASD lays out, STREAM will develop our own very specific plan that fits our school and our charter. And we will roll that out to you as soon as possible. We won't surprise anybody. There won't be an announcement from STREAM that says, we're coming back on short notice. They're again, for planning purposes, for preparation, for what's best for our staff and our kids. I want 2, 3, 4 weeks of lead time. Ideally, right, we would say, next quarter we're doing this. With 4 or 5 weeks to go. So we will be assessing and analyzing everything, and we'll be keeping you posted. We are working on a survey. It's not done yet. This will be coming. Parents, please fill this out. And if you have suggestions on, what questions you might want asked, feel free to send those my way. So I have on here, what is your comfort level returning face-to-face during second quarter or after? Some questions about what plan would you prefer when we do return face-to-face? And so just a straight up, if we do come back face-to-face second quarter, will your child be returning? So it'll be good for me to have that data and say, well, if we do jump right back into face-to-face, this percentage of our students would return and this wouldn't. And so we'd need to know, who we'd need to accommodate outside of that. And then, if the district allows a face-to-face return and we don't jump right back into full face-to-face, what I can tell you is once we have permission for face-to-face activities and interactions, we're going to immediately start to do the things we talked about where we get kids together for treks, for hikes, for walks in the park, for science data gathering, for study groups. So even if we don't return fully face-to-face, all 3 classes 4 or 5 days a week, if the district has opened that up and said that that's safe enough to open schools, what we will start to do is we'll start to offer face-to-face learning opportunities and treks, and get you start to get people together face-to-face in a lot of other ways to allow for those opportunities. So I know we're running long on time here. It's after 9 o'clock, but I needed to take some time at the end here to share some of the thinking and planning around that. Thank you to Ms. Goodman and Ms. Smith. Awesome job today. Thank you, Ms. Gatlin, for your presentation. Great job. Parents, thank you for being with us today. Ms. Yip, our APC chair, thank you for joining us. And thank you, Ms. Yip. I appreciate the birthday wishes. All right, it is after 9 o'clock. We went a little long today. We'll start to wrap up. I'll stay on for a minute in case people want to talk to me and don't want that broadcast over everything. I'm going to end the live stream on YouTube. So YouTube audience, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Don't forget, Tamara Letter, Passion for Kindness author, is with us next Wednesday.